All right, so we're taking a deep dive into the 2025 Golden Globes fashion. And we've got your research notes here, a couple articles, and some of your own thoughts. I'm sensing a theme here, and I think it's safe to say that we are going to be saying, what were they thinking? Quite a bit.
Yeah, you could say that. The 82nd Golden
Hmm.
Globes, was a night of interesting choices.
Interesting is a good word.
Yeah, a lot of the articles you've collected point to a real fear of risk-taking. It seems like a lot of stars were kind of clinging to the past instead of really embracing modern style.
Yeah, that whole nostalgia thing, it really jumped out at me. It's like everybody raided their grandma's closet or something. But before we go full on fashion police, let's start with one of the most talked about looks. You flagged Ariana Grande's butter yellow gown as a prime example of this retro trend gone wrong. What happened there?
Well, on paper, vintage Givenchy sounds amazing, right? But what the source points out is that the gown's volume just completely overwhelmed her petite frame. Huge skirt, tons of intricate beading, that bold color. It's just a lot to take in, even on somebody taller.
So it's not just that the dress was from a different era, it's that the proportions were all off. It's like, love the idea, hate the execution. What can we learn from this, even if we're not planning on rocking a ball gown anytime soon?
It's a great example of how important it is to understand your own silhouette. Even in everyday outfits, you want to balance volume and detail. Think about it. A chunky knit sweater might look great with slim-fitting pants, but pair it with a full skirt, and suddenly you're drowning in fabric.
Right, finding that balance is key. Okay, speaking of silhouettes that didn't quite work, you also flagged Naomi Watts' dress. I remember seeing the pictures. It was like two different outfits battling for attention.
Yes, the source called it a mushroom shape. I think that sums it up perfectly. The top was this sleek black velvet, very classic Hollywood, but then the bottom exploded into this voluminous, almost bubblegum pink cloud of fabric.
Talk about a clash of aesthetics.
Yeah.
So what went wrong there? Was it the color combination, the textures, the shapes?
Or all of the above. It's a great question, and I think it highlights a really core concept in fashion design. Cohesion, every element from the silhouette to the color to the texture, needs to work together to create this harmonious whole. In this case, it felt like the designer was just trying to do too much at once, and the result was just chaotic.
Cohesion, got it. I'm already starting to rethink my wardrobe. Okay, before we move on to the next fashion faux pas, I want to touch on something else you mentioned. The glove situation, it seemed like everyone was wearing them, but not always successfully. What's the deal with that?
The opera glove trend? It's an interesting one. When you look back at fashion history, they've been a symbol of elegance and sophistication for centuries. But this year, it felt like a lot of stars just slapped them on as an afterthought. Instead of elevating the look, they became a distraction.
So it's not just about wearing a trendy item, it's about understanding how to incorporate it into your overall style.
Exactly. Opera gloves can be incredibly chic, but they need to be styled thoughtfully. Think about the length, the fabric, the color. It all plays a role in how the gloves interact with the rest of the outfit.
Right, you wouldn't wear a chunky wool glove with a delicate silk down. It's all about finding that right balance of textures and proportions. Okay, we've talked about Ariana's overwhelming gown, Naomi's mushroom dress, and the glove glut. What other fashion felonies do we need to investigate?
Well, you mark Andrew Scott's cyan suit as a prime example of a trend gone wrong. The monochrome look can be really stylish, but in this case, the head-to-toe cyan was just too much. The source even compared it to taking a dip in blue paint.
Ouch, that's gotta sting. I guess even a bold color needs to be balanced out, not amplified to the extreme.
Right, and it brings up an interesting point about context. You mentioned earlier that Andrew Scott's a stylish guy, so it's not that he inherently makes bad choices. But a bright cyan suit at the Golden Globes, it just felt out of place.
It's like wearing a ball gown to a backyard barbecue. The outfit itself might be stunning, but it doesn't fit the occasion.
Exactly. Context is everything. You always have to consider the event, the venue, the overall vibe when you're putting together an outfit.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Context, cohesion, balance. I'm starting to sound like a fashion expert myself.
You're catching on quickly. Now, before we move on to some other notable looks, I want to circle back to this idea of nostalgia. We've seen how it can go wrong, but I'm curious to hear your take on why it was such a dominant theme on the red carpet this year.
Well, like I said earlier, it felt like a lot of stars were channeling their grandmas. But, maybe there's something deeper going on here. Like maybe it's a way of trying to escape the chaos of the world and find comfort in the familiar. What do you think?
I think you're onto something. This longing for a simpler time, it often manifests itself in fashion. But the question is, are we celebrating the history of fashion, or are we just rehashing it without adding anything new?
Ooh, good question. That's something I want to unpack further. But first, let's take a look at some other celebrities who tried to pull off the retro look, shall we? We've got a few more what were they thinking moments lined up, and I can't wait to hear your expert analysis.
Let's move on to Cynthia Erivo. She wore this black dress with a white floral pattern, which on paper sounds pretty lovely, right?
Yeah, sounds classic. What was the issue?
Well, the article called it a rectangular riddle. There was this appendage shape. I don't even know what to call it.
Okay, you're loose. Paint me a picture.
Imagine this stiff rectangular panel attached at her waist extending down into the skirt, like a geometry project gone wrong.
Oh, no. So good concept in theory, but the execution was questionable.
Exactly. It highlights how even talented designers can sometimes miss the mark. And it kind of reinforces that lesson we discussed earlier about cohesion. You know, every element of a look needs to work together harmoniously.
All right, next up on the fashion police lineup.
Let's discuss Kerry Washington. Now, she usually has impeccable style, but this year's pink ensemble was not her best. Remember the source said it looked casually wrapped around her?
Yeah, like she just threw on a sheet and called it a day. What
Yeah.
happened there?
Well, sometimes even the best stylists have off days. And maybe Kerry was going for a more relaxed, effortless vibe, but on a red carpet like the Golden Globes, it just didn't translate well.
Right. Like there's a difference between effortless chic and looking like you didn't try.
Exactly.
Right.
And it brings up another important point, the power of tailoring. Even the most beautiful fabric can look sloppy if it's not properly fitted.
So fit is everything.
Absolutely. A good tailor can make all the difference.
Okay, one last look before we move on to some final takeaways. We talked about Melissa McCarthy's pink jumpsuit and ruffled cape earlier. Any other thoughts on that one?
Well, besides the confectionery creation comment from the article, I think it's worth noting that she wasn't the only one who went a little overboard with the ruffles this year. It seemed like every other dress had some sort of exaggerated flounce or frill.
Oh, interesting. So it was a bit of a trend.
It definitely seemed that way, and it goes back to our discussion about balance. A little bit of ruffle can be playful and feminine, but too much just looks overdone.
So like most things in fashion, it's all about finding that right balance.
Precisely. And it's about knowing when to say, enough is enough. Sometimes simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Well said. So we've dissected some of the most memorable looks from the 2025 Golden Globes, and we've gleaned some valuable insights about fashion trends, personal style, and the importance of balance, cohesion, and context.
We've also had a lot of laughs along the way,
Mm,
which is important because at the end of the day, fashion should be fun.
absolutely. It's a form of self-expression, a way to celebrate our individuality, and a chance to, take risks and have a little fun.
Exactly. And even though we've had a bit of fun poking fun at some of these fashion misses, I think it's important to acknowledge the courage it takes for these celebrities to put themselves out there on the red carpet.
Totally. It's easy to sit here and judge, but at the end of the day, they're the ones in the spotlight.
And they're the ones who are helping to shape the conversation about fashion and style.
So let's raise a glass to all the fashion risk takers out there. The ones who dare to be different and push the boundaries of what's considered acceptable.
Cheers to that. And cheers to the future of fashion. May it be bold, innovative, and truly individualistic.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to give our listeners some final takeaways, some key things to remember as they navigate their own fashion journeys. What are your top 3 tips for cultivating a strong sense of personal style?
It's a great question. I think my top 3 tips would be, number 1, experiment. Don't be afraid to try new things, even if you're not sure if they'll work. The only way to discover your personal style is to step outside of your comfort zone and explore different options. Number 2, be true to yourself. Don't dress to impress others. Dress in a way that makes you feel confident and comfortable in your own skin. Your style should be a reflection of your personality and your unique perspective. And number 3, have fun. Fashion should be enjoyable, not stressful. Don't take it too seriously. Play around with different looks, mix and match pieces. And don't be afraid to break the rules.
Those are great tips. I would add one more. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're feeling lost or overwhelmed by the world of fashion, reach out to a friend, a stylist, or even a sales associate at your favorite store. There are people out there who can help you find your style and put together outfits that make you feel amazing.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask for guidance. We don't have to do this alone.
All right, on that note, let's wrap up this deep dive into the 2025 Golden Globes fashion scene. We've laughed, we've learned, and we've hopefully gained a new appreciation for the power of personal style.
And we've left you with some food for thought. What does the future of red carpet fashion hold? Will we see a return to classic elegance, a continued embrace of vintage inspiration, or something completely new and unexpected?
That's a question for you, dear listener, to ponder. Pay attention to the upcoming award shows, keep an eye on the latest fashion trends, and most importantly, stay true to your own unique style.
And who knows, maybe you'll be the one setting the trend someday.
Now that's an inspiring thought. Okay, before we let our fashion-forward listener go, there's one more point in the source material that I found super intriguing. It talked about how this Golden Globes fashion fiasco might actually be a good thing in the long run. It's funny we spent all this time talking about the fashion misses, but the source material actually makes a really compelling argument that this whole Golden Globes debacle could be a turning point for the better.
Yeah, it's a fascinating perspective. The idea is that by highlighting these extreme examples of what not to do, it forces us to confront some deeper questions about fashion. What's the purpose of red carpet style? Is it just about showcasing these expensive labels? Or can it be something more meaningful?
I see what you mean. Like, instead of just blindly following trends, this gives us a chance to step back and say, okay, what kind of message do I want to send with my clothes?
Exactly. And that's where this idea of a fashion revolution comes in. The sources suggest that we might be moving toward a new era, where individuality and personal expression are valued more than just conforming to these traditional standards of glamour.
I'm all for that. So less about fitting in and more about standing out.
Precisely. And not just standing out for the sake of being different, but using fashion as a way to tell your story, to showcase your values, and to connect with others who share your sense of style.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. But how do we actually make that happen?
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about a fashion revolution, but how do we translate that into real change on the red carpet and beyond?
Your notes highlight a few key trends that are already starting to emerge. For one, we're seeing a growing emphasis on sustainability. More and more celebrities are choosing to wear vintage pieces or outfits made from eco-friendly materials.
Right, and not just wearing them, but actually talking about why they made those choices, using their platform to raise awareness about these important issues.
Exactly. And beyond sustainability, we're also seeing this push for more diversity and inclusivity in the fashion world. Designers are showcasing a wider range of body types and skin tones. And celebrities are using their red carpet moments to celebrate their heritage and individuality.
So it's about moving away from this one-size-fits-all definition of beauty and embracing the richness and complexity of the human experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we can all take inspiration from, whether we're walking a red carpet or just getting dressed for a day at the office.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've dissected some serious fashion fails, explored the psychology of trends, and even pondered the future of red carpet style. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier, this idea of fashion as a form of storytelling. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Every piece of clothing we choose, every accessory we add, it's a way of communicating something about ourselves to the world. Whether it's our personality, our mood, our values, or our sense of style, our clothes are telling a story.
Right, like you wouldn't wear a power suit to a picnic or a sundress to a job interview. Your clothes set the tone and create an impression before you even say a word.
Exactly. And just like any good story, a well-crafted outfit has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a clear message, a sense of cohesion, and a point of view.
So it's not just about throwing on whatever's clean, it's about being intentional with our choices and using fashion as a tool for self-expression.
Precisely. And I think that's the most important takeaway from this whole deep dive. Fashion is more than just trends and labels. It's a powerful way to connect with ourselves, to express our creativity, and to make a statement about who we are and what we believe in.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our Golden Globes fashion journey. We've laughed, we've learned, and we've hopefully inspired you to think a little more deeply about the stories you're telling with your own style.
Remember, there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to fashion. The most important thing is to have fun, to be true to yourself, and to use your clothing choices as a force for good in the world.
Beautifully said. Until next time, stay stylish and stay curious.